In the heart of Harlem, a dramatic courtroom saga unfolds, with Sylvana P. accused by the Public Prosecution Service of being the First Lady of the notorious Hells Angels in Harlem. Currently, Sylvana was facing a daunting 3.5-year prison sentence. However, she clearly denies any affiliation with the motorcycle club and claims to be an outsider who detests their activities. This case raises critical questions about the case and verdict. Let's take a look at why a barely linked lady was sentenced and what was her role for the organization. Sylvana's predicament became public knowledge when her abhorrent comments during taped telephone conversations were revealed. In these conversations, she referred to Hells Angels members as dirty, stinking shit farmers and a bunch of retards. As she stood in court, she was visibly shaken by the impending sentence. Her personal struggles intensified as her daughter's father was already in prison, leaving her to bear the brunt of their separation. The case against Sylvana revolves around the allegations that she acted as a conduit for criminal messages from her partner, Hells Angels president Lysander Dr., who was incarcerated at the time. The prosecution further accuses her of complicity in 2 fires in Hookwood at the DeWaver Sports Hall and involvement in a criminal organization. In 2014 and 2015, Hells Angels ignited these fires in Hookwood, and even shots were also observed in the area. At that time, her partner, Lysander, was the president of Hells Angels, so it was clear that if he hated this all, she would have left him already. But her defense had something else to say about this verdict. Sylvana's defense attorney, Remco Kint, paints a starkly different picture. He asserted that she had minimal interaction with the club, rarely visiting their clubhouse or conversing with its members. It was being said that her husband was solely handling it all, while she had no part to play in. Even her husband, Lysander, became concerned about her potential involvement when he learned of the legal consequences of their prison conversations. Their year-long separation added credence to her claim of being an outsider. But what made it tilting into Savannah's defense was the fact that no potential evidence was found. Kint criticizes the court for relying solely on anonymous tips from informants, arguing that such statements should not serve as primary evidence. He points to the lack of concrete proof and suggests that the prosecution was constructing scenarios based on suggestive assumptions. Moreover, he highlights a critical legal point. Sylvana cannot be convicted of contributing to a criminal organization, as she was not a club member. Another thing that makes it even more clear was the fact that women are not allowed to join the Hells Angels. These motorcycle gangs revolve around masculinity, and they have no space for women in their gang. The prosecution's reliance on informants to build their case raises significant concerns about the quality of evidence presented in court. Informants, often motivated by self-preservation or personal gain, can be unreliable sources. Kint contends that the prosecution's case was built on shaky ground, with too many missing links and a lack of direct evidence tying Sylvana to criminal activities. The narrative of Sylvana as a high-ranking member of the Harlem Hells Angels clashes with her actual role. Kint emphasizes that she harbors no sympathy for the club, citing her severe aversion to riding motorcycles. In her lawyer's eyes, Sylvana was a caring woman entangled with a complex man. He says that being with a bad person was no crime because you could never know what a man has to hide. So she was just a nice woman, and you could only arrest her if being with a bad guy was a crime. Sylvana's unique position placed her as the sole point of contact with Lysander Dr. during his incarceration, but her defense argues that she had no involvement in any criminal activities of the motorcycle club. If left to her wishes, she would never interact with the club again. In a passionate plea, Kint requests an acquittal on all charges, citing the flimsy nature of the evidence and the undue reliance on informant statements. The verdict, eagerly awaited by Sylvana and her 9 co-suspects, was scheduled for July 18, 2018. In a parallel development, the public prosecution officer was pursuing prison sentences of 2.5 to 3.5 years for 5 members of the Harlem Hells Angels. And one on this list was Sylvana, who wasn't even a member of the gang. The charges primarily centered on their alleged membership in a criminal organization. Additionally, one of the suspects faces weapon charges due to firearms found in his possession. The prosecution's perspective was clear. The Hells Angels constitute a criminal organization that glorifies violence. They contend that members are rewarded for violent actions, even against law enforcement officers. However, the judge's final decision remains uncertain, as the mere presence of criminal members in a club does not necessarily make the entire organization criminal. The motorcycle club's alleged exploitation of its societal image, coupled with extortion and threats, paints a bleak picture according to the prosecution. The fear of retribution has reportedly discouraged victims from reporting violence, creating a climate of impunity. The prosecution's push to seize the Hells Angels clubhouse in Harlem adds another layer of complexity to the case, potentially disrupting their stronghold since 1979. So we can't only blame the Hells Angels at this point. As the trial's verdict draws nearer, the fate of Silvana P. and her co-suspects hangs in the balance. The courtroom drama unfolds against the backdrop of a contentious debate about what it means to be associated with a criminal organization and whether Silvana's gender played a role in the harsh sentencing demand. Regardless of the outcome, this case will leave a lasting mark on the Dutch legal landscape and society at large. The trial of Silvana P. and the Harlem Hells Angels raises critical questions about the justice system's handling of complex cases involving criminal organizations. The evidence presented against Silvana was far from ironclad, relying heavily on anonymous informants and suggestive assumptions. Her defense attorney, Remco Kint, argues convincingly that she should not be held responsible for the actions of a club she was not even allowed to join. The broader implications of this case extend to the definition of a criminal organization and the role of gender in criminal prosecutions. While the prosecutors are painting a grim picture of the Hells Angels as a violent, organized criminal entity, the judges must carefully consider whether guilt by association alone warrants such severe sentences. As the verdict date approached, all eyes were on the Dutch judicial system to see whether justice will be served or whether Silvana P. and her co-suspects will become casualties in a battle against the Hells Angels. But at the end, all of them were sentenced, but the jury verdict about Silvana was a little different. As she was, her sentence was reduced to 24 months. She was even given the opportunity to serve the prison time only when it was final. The jury even gave her time to arrange childcare for her 2-year-old daughter, as her husband was already in for 9 years. Seeing it all, Silvana accepted the sentence and chose not to appeal against it. That was it for today's video. This time, I am even confused about what the ground reality is. Because if you cast a look from the court's perspective, they might seem right. On the other hand, listening to Silvana's side of the story makes you sympathize with her. Let me know in the comments section what is your opinion about it. Don't forget to give a like and share with your friends.